Hey guys, so I'm back. Um, Wanted to share this next video. Actually, it's a PowerPoint, but we're closing out Black History Month strong. I'm actually going to keep going with these throughout March because I didn't finish, so I want to keep going. I actually got sick, and so that put a damper on things, but I'm back and I'm going to continue to share these until I kind of don't have anything else to say. So I kind of want to keep going with this into March. So, but for this one, we're continuing to look at a captivity comparison for Black History Month. And again, this is just examining the scriptures, for me, examining the scriptures and sharing where I see the similarities between what the Bible says and the experience of being Black. So, again, closing out Black History Month strong. This one is the oppression of our babies and family. The first one that I looked at was just going into slavery, like how it was similar for both Egyptian and American. The next one was Moses, kind of like the Avenger and just the whole story behind that and the similarities. And this one is the oppression of our babies and family. So jumping right in, also first, for this one as well, I did it for the last one, but for this one, I also just want to give a trigger warning. Obviously, this is kind of like a sensitive subject dealing with babies and, harming babies. So if that's going to be triggering for you, again, you may not want to watch, but you actually kind of do want to watch because, it could be information that you didn't know or that you never thought of. So I actually do encourage you to watch it, but if it's going to be triggering, again, this would be the time that you should probably turn it off. Okay, so, but again, we're continuing this whole theme of comparison that in both the Egyptian and American captivity, unfortunately, our babies were slain. When I first read this in the scriptures, we're continuing in Jasher. And when I first read this, it was a lot of similarities that stood out to me in terms of how our young were treated in both captivities with both Egyptian and American. So continuing with this theme of comparison, and apology, guys. I'm still kind of sick, so I'm going to either sound weird or cough a little bit. But anyways, continuing on with this theme, one of the things that I noticed was the persecution through water. And this happened in both the Egyptian and the American. So I thought American captivities, I mean, so I thought that was interesting. So we're continuing in Jasher. And I wanted to, again, just share this via PowerPoint because I think there's power in like reading the word and power in seeing the word. And so, if you don't have access to Jasher, I wanted to read it so that, you can see it, you can pause, you can take it in. It's just power in seeing the word. So if you don't have access to Jasher, you can, read it here. So um, we'll start with this is Jasher chapter 67, verses 51 and 52. So 51. And the king ordered a proclamation to be issued and a law to be made throughout the land of Egypt, saying, every male child born to the Hebrews from this day forward shall be thrown into the water. Verse 52. And Pharaoh called unto all his servants, saying, go now and seek throughout the land where the children of Israel are, and see that every son born to the Hebrews shall be cast into the river, and every daughter you shall let live. So I wanted to actually just kind of go over these points because this is actually what stood out to me when I first read this. One was this idea of a law, like so that Pharaoh and the Egyptian government kind of made a law, and I think that that's a common thing that we see throughout our captivities. Is that well through the American and again the Egyptian is this idea of a law is always created to persecute, right? When they want to do something, they make it a law. So they do that here in America, and then in Egypt they did the same thing. They made a law to enact to be able to murder, basically murder these babies. So that was just kind of interesting to me. The next thing was, where it says every male child is born. Um, that struck with me too, because I feel like um, that's something that our people have had to deal with, or black people, right? And that's actually something that was shown throughout the scriptures. If you go through, I believe it's Nimrod. Yeah, I think it's Nimrod. If you go through starting at like Nimrod had a decree that all the male babies should be or killed because I think he was looking for Abraham. Then you come here. there's a decree again to kill the male, the male child. You go on. Um, Herod wanted to kill the males, looking for the Christ. So I say all that to say that this is, and then even in our captivity in this country, I mean, I hate to say it, but if you think about even like maybe like police shootings, they're predominantly killing, black men. So I think that there's this spirit that attacks the destiny of Israelite men. And so, it's displayed here with the male child, the male child being killed. But the purpose of this is actually the comparison is being thrown into the water. So as you can see, Pharaoh did it, or the king did a decree to throw these Israelite babies into the water. So they were cast into the rivers, um, and killed, unfortunately, and killed in that way. So, so continuing on, not just the water, um, or our the babies being killed in the water. Another similarity that I saw in continuing on with our Jasher reading was the breakdown of the black family, and this was interesting because I feel like this happened in both captivities, where just our families were broken down. And so we're just going to continue with our reading. So this is Jasher again 67. This is the next verse 53 and 54. So 53. And when the children of Israel heard this thing which Pharaoh had commanded, again staying with them casting them into the river, to cast their male children into the river, some of the people separated from their wives and others adhered to them. 54. And from that day forward, when the time of delivery arrived to those women of Israel who had remained with their husbands, they went to the field to bring forth there, and they brought forth in the field and left their children upon the field and returned home. So again, you know, along with the persecution through water, it was the breakdown of the black family. This says some of the people separated from their wives. We know that was husbands. So it was husbands. So this thing of, they left their wives, and I imagine it's because of the pain. One, they probably didn't want to get their wives pregnant in a time like this, and just the pain of everything going on. We see that some actually left their wives. So again, there's a breakdown, one in the male being removed, and then just the breakdown of the family. And then not only that, um, some of the women, we see that they abandoned their babies. They didn't, I guess they didn't know what to do, so they brought them forth in the field in secret and left their children there. So this was interesting to see just the breakdown of a family. We know that that also happened in slavery, where babies were taken away from mothers. Men, were sold away. So it wasn't necessarily the same, but it's still this notion of, in a captivity, the family structure is broke down. So I just wanted to share those comparisons. So the next comparison is, and this is interesting. I actually didn't know this, and I didn't know anything about this until I read this in Jasher, and it's kind of brutal, but it's the instance of the Egyptians using our babies as bricks. And when I say that, I mean that in a literal sense. They use them as bricks. They use them to build buildings. They use babies. So it's very brutal. But I thought that this was, again, another comparison just of brutality in the captivities. But we'll just get to reading. So this is Jasher. This can be found in Jasher chapter 77, and we'll start at 9 and just take it, I think, to 20, but this is 9 through 15. So verse 9. Um, and he went with his servants to Goshen. Oh, context, Megan, context. So context is, I believe the Pharaoh, or, the Egyptian leadership, they thought that the Israelites were being slack in their work, right? So they thought the Israelites were being slack. So because of that, they put forth a decree that if they were slack in their work, that they were going to basically have to use babies. So this is kind of explaining all of that and how that came to be. So verse 9, and he went with his servants to Goshen, to the children of Israel, and he strengthened the labor over them. This is, I guess, the king of Egypt. And he said unto them, complete your work each day's task, and let not your hands slacken from our work, from this day forward, as you did in the days of my father. Verse 10, and he placed officers over them from amongst the children of Israel. And so this is over, when it says them, that's the slaves in Egypt. So he placed officers over them from amongst the children of Israel, and over these officers he placed taskmasters from amongst his servants. Excuse me. 11. And he placed over them a measure of bricks for them to do according to that number day by day, and he turned back and went to Egypt. And at that time, the taskmasters of Pharaoh ordered the officers of the children of Israel to the command of the Pharaoh, saying, Thus saith Pharaoh, do your work each day and finish your task, and observe the daily measure of bricks. Diminish not anything. 14. And it shall come to pass that if you are deficient in your daily bricks, I will put your young children in their stead, in their place. So this is saying, if you're slacking in any way, I will put your children in their place. And the taskmasters of Egypt did so those days as Pharaoh had ordered them. So pause. Um, so I highlighted these 2 points because one thing that did, again, captivity comparison that stood out to me was that we know in American slavery, right, that they did use some of the slaves to kind of oversee the other slaves, and we see that that was done here too. It says, and he placed officers over them from amongst the children of Israel, and over these officers he placed taskmasters amongst his servants. So that was interesting to me when I read that, like, oh, that happened in both Egypt and America. This idea of slaves being over slaves, right? But obviously the biggest thing is verse 14, where it says, if you're deficient in your bricks, we'll put your young children in your place. You know, I don't even know I don't even know what to say to that. The fact that they were using babies, again, got babies as bricks to build the cities. So that, kind of blew my mind when I first read that. But we're going to continue on. So this is Jasher, chapter 77, 16 through 20. So, starting at 16, and whenever any deficiency was found in the children of Israel's measure of their daily bricks, the taskmasters of Pharaoh would go to the wives of the children of Israel and take infants of the children of Israel to the number of bricks deficient. They would take them by force from their mothers' laps and put them in the building instead of the bricks. Ugh. 17. Whilst their fathers and mothers were crying over them and weeping, they heard the weeping voices of their infants in the wall of the building. 18. And taskmasters prevailed over Israel that the Israelites should place their children in the building, so that a man placed his son in the wall and put mortar over him, whilst his eyes wept over him, and his tears ran down upon his child. 19. And the taskmasters of Egypt did so to the babes of Israel for many days, and no one pitied or had compassion over the babes of the children of Israel. 20. And the number of all the children killed in the building was 270, some whom they had built upon instead of bricks, which had been left deficient by their fathers, and some whom they had drawn out dead from the building. Okay, so to review, again, comparing captivities, highlighting the points that I just wanted to discuss. Um, Again, this idea of taking the children by force from their mother's laps. Um, again, we see that happened in both. Um, Now I don't know American. They weren't using them as bricks, but um, this idea of ripping, the baby out of their mother's lap, and taking them from their families. So we see that happened in both. And again, just the brutality that happened in both. And then the next, I just highlighted this because that just hurt my heart to read that. That our people were. Can you imagine? Like, can you imagine? Can you imagine? Oh my! I can't even imagine. Can you imagine having to use your son or use your daughter, your baby, as a brick? Like, this is what was going on, and they had to build over them. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! I can't even imagine. So this one, it says, and no one pitied or had compassion over the babes of the children of Israel. I highlighted this because this is actually a prophecy point in Deuteronomy. So we see that this is a common theme. So in if you read Deuteronomy and it talks about the curses and Yahuwah is prophesying and he's saying you're going to go into captivity and the lands that you go, they're going to have no pity on the old or young. So this is Jasher. This is the Egyptian captivity, right? So we see in, again, comparison point, in this captivity, they had no pity on the old or young. They didn't have any, it says that they had no compassion over the babes of Israel. They had no compassion over the infants and the babies. And Yahuwah prophesied that that would happen again. And when he did that, and I think it's in Deuteronomy, we know he's not talking about Egypt because they had just come out of Egypt. So he's talking about a future captivity again, where you would like more than likely be slaves, and they will again have no compassion on your young. And we saw that in our captivity with, you guys have seen the pictures, the babies working in the field. Um, again, babies being, ripped from families, all these things. So that's a comparison point that happened in both. Um, and so this is the next one, 20. So whom they had built upon the son of the bricks. Again, I don't think that happened in the American captivity, but that just really hurt my heart when I read that. And it just speaks to the brutality of slavery for our people. So for comparison points, and again, just to tie this all together, I wanted to highlight some comparison summary points. And again, these are just comparison summary points that I saw in both. That when I read these scriptures from Jasher, it really reminded me, sorry, excuse me, it reminded me of our American captivity and just how similar they really are. So, the first comparison point is both captivities, Egyptian and American, they threw the babies in the river or water. You see that in both. You see that in Egyptian, and you saw that they, particularly in the South, they threw the babies in the water when they were trying to catch alligators. Um, Comparison point two is both captivities had no regard for infants. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Both had no regard for infants. And that is, again, that's prophesy. You can read that in Deuteronomy, where Yahuwah highlights that when you're in captivity, Egyptian, and then a future captivity, this land will have no regard for your babies. They won't have any regard for the old or for the young. So we see that in American, they didn't have any regard for the infants, and in Egyptian, they didn't have any regard for the infants. Captivity point three, both captivities caused families to separate. We know for sure that that happened in American captivity. That's for sure. Family members were sold at a moment's notice. Family members were just separated. Fathers were taken away, mothers were taken away, children. People were sold and they never saw them again. And then I don't know if people abandon their children in slavery as well. I'm not, I don't know, but I mean, like, how the mothers in Egyptian, it talks about the mothers would take their babies into the field and then just leave them. I don't know, but families were separated under both captivities. Um, and then point four, which I thought was interesting and I didn't really think about until I read Jasher and then thought about the two, was that in both captivities, black baby bodies were used as objects. That happened in both. So as we read in the Egyptian captivity, um, where's my little highlighter? Let me get it. Okay, so in the Egyptian captivity, babies were used as bricks. So they used babies as bricks. In the American captivity, they used babies as alligator bait. So if they or black babies, um, if they wanted to catch an alligator, they would use a black baby as alligator bait to bait the alligator to come. So that happened. That's real. So these are just, you know, again, highlighting the comparison points between both captivities. So to conclude, I wanted to just chat through this visual because I feel like this is a nice visual of, again, the extreme similarities between American and Egyptian. So, getting my pointer again. So, if you look at these images, knowing that they used black babies to catch alligators in American captivity, I thought that I would just chat through the very distinct comparisons or equal points. So this is a picture from American Captivity. You know, the image of using a black baby to catch alligators. You know, it's terrible. They're calling them, you know, I'm not even gonna say it, but you guys can read it. It's, you know, the licorice drops. I'm not, but they're using it to catch the alligator. And then now this, I'm gonna be so transparent. Okay, 100%. I got this from the Prince of Egypt. So like this is not like a real picture. I got it from the Prince of Egypt. But at the same time, I like this image because regardless, it does demonstrate what actually happened. Even though it's from like an animated film, it does demonstrate what actually happened. We just read, we read the scripture, so we know that this happened. So it's still a good image to use. So just concluding, um, you can see it. You can see it. So here we have American, here we have Egyptian, American, Egyptian, baby, alligator, river, baby, alligator, river. That's American, Egypt, alligator, river, babies, babies, river, alligators. You see it? It's the same. It's the same. So, you know, again, not to belabor the point, but it's really, really interesting being a black person and just reading these scriptures and seeing how things, you know, the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun. And so it's just interesting seeing the extreme similarities, American Egyptian, like just how many similarities there are, because again, it points to the captivity, it points to the markers of a people, and it points to the captivity markers of a people who are going to be able to be identified throughout scripture. So that concludes it. This again is 22 minutes, so we're done. So again, apologies, guys. If you watch this, hallelujah, praise Yah, guys. Oh my gosh, like the amount of times I had to stop and cough. So I apologize for the coughing, and I thank you. If you watch this, thank you. And I'm gonna keep going in March with this theme and just continue to share more videos. But I hope everyone had an official Black History Month, and I'm going to keep the Black History Month going, but I hope you had an official good Black History Month, a good end to it. And yeah, that's it. So hopefully you got something out of this, and that's it. So I hope everyone has a great day. Bye.